Universal Governance and Management System 7 presents. What is law? A cybernetic definition. The U.S. Constitution, designed by lawyers in 1787, is a testament to excellent cybernetic intuition. On the other hand, the best jurists in the Western world seem incapable of spelling out clearly what is the true nature of the law. The Founding Fathers were intuitive cyberneticians. The latter have been systems blind. The jurists had an impossible task because they were lacking the proper language. First, the idea of information, and second, the notion of a highly complex system and related ideas. This language does not belong to the law. It belongs to cybernetics, and more specifically to management cybernetics developed by Professor Stafford Beer. The effort of the jurists defining the law reminds us of the story about the blind man describing the elephant. I have noticed exactly the same thing happen to economists. The problem is the reductionist frame of mind. Jurists were obviously swept by the wave of Newtonian science that took the planet by storm. Some searched for the equivalent of the legal law of gravity. Others, like Leon Duguay, searched for the irreducible legal phenomena in law as a social fact. What they needed was to look at the big picture. Newtonian reductionism hurt the law. It seems that in law, no one noticed that the world evolved from Newtonian science to Einstein's relativity, and since World War II to the cybernetic paradigm. However, law schools and professors appear trapped by their temple law libraries. Beyond the rules, there is information. The first thing to do is to recognize that law is information. The founding father of cybernetics, Norbert Wiener, said that information is information, not energy, not matter. Information can be present in the form of structure, messages, instructions, or symbols. For instance, law uses information in many ways: rules, instructions, and structures. As you will see, law uses instructions to create a legal structure named or called the nation-state. The resulting structure is homomorphic with the structure of the human nervous system. Here is my Universal Governance and Management System 7 model with its 7 systemic functions. This is my way of presenting Stafford Beer's ideas. The point is that this structure is the same for a legal person, any organization as shown here, including the state. So we are now ready to inspect the jurist's definition of law. As you will see, all definitions fit somewhere in this model. Paul Kahn's project order and system order coincide with the nature of the blue and red areas of the cybernetic model. Projects are part of the planning system, and the system, colored here in red, includes the operations once planned in the blue area. In the model, the red is the system and the blue is the management or metasystem. Roscoe said, where conflicting poles of political philosophy, economic interest, and ethical values constantly struggled for recognition. This is where the law came in. He is actually talking about homeostats. This notion of conflicting poles corresponds to the homeostatic nature of internal control systems which allow viable systems to survive. Here are 18 control loops linked to the viable system model. These are actually what Roscoe means about conflicting poles. Here we are looking at one recursion level. I won't go into any more details in this presentation. Identity. According to Kelsen, law is a normative science. The identity systemic function houses the values and goals of any type of viable organization. In the Universal Governance and Management System 7 model, the identity is in charge of issuing normative planning, which is then implemented through strategic and tactical planning. Cardozo spoke about prediction and reasonable certainty. He is referring to the capacity of the planning system to test the future environment and transfer that knowledge to the design of the control systems. When John Austin defines the law as a set of rules to be followed by everyone, he is involving the planning, the executive, and the coordination systemic functions all at once. All three systemic functions are involved in setting the rules that have metasystemic qualities as far as the operations are concerned. This is done from a panoramic view of the viability of the whole system that individuals do not possess. Now let's see how von Ihering's teachings fits in the model. In his definition of law, viability stands out. He says, the form of the guarantee of conditions of life of society assured by the state's power of constraint. The state has metasystemic coercive power indeed. It should be the power of the collective will. Now, the law, considered as the whole of the state structure, is a means of social control, he says. 2, the law is to serve the purposes of the society. And 3, law, due to its nature, is coercive. Now, all this is expressed in the model. Now we look to another part of Cardozo's statements. It's also about homeostats and about coordination. He says, law also helps to avoid any potential conflict of interest and also helps to resolve them. Now, this resolution of conflict of interest corresponds to the homeostatic nature of internal control systems which allow viable systems to survive, or more specifically, they belong to the coordination systemic function. From the natural school, we get the error detection function when it says a court of justice decides all the laws. Here we must interpret that decides also means defines. Now, this function corresponds to the error detection systemic function. In the state, it is the justice system. In a corporation, it can be the audit channel. It is not very proper to have the whole being defined by one of its parts. Oliver Wendell Holmes describes the law in terms of judicial processes. He says, "Law is a statement of the circumstances in which public force will be brought to bear upon through the courts." Again, here is a partial explanation. Now notice that the error detection channel, the judiciary, does not have control of the enforcement channel. Police usually depend from the executive, not from the courts. Savigny's historical perspective touches on the concept of self-organization. Of all the jurists annotated above, Savigny is perhaps the most systemic of them all. He toys with the three modern systemic ideas: self-organization, organic growth, and common consciousness. However, he is wrong to say that law is not universal. Well, maybe it doesn't surface in the same terms, but it is always subjacent with one goal in mind: ensure viability. The cybernetic model fits all. Now let's talk about two types of logic. Law is in a constant rebalancing act. Law produces the nation-state, and the nation-state produces more laws. This circular causality is also an inevitable characteristic of legislative action, because law has to be an open system. It's changing continuously. Now, Aristotle's syllogism is not the only logic used in law. We are also using cybernetic logic or circular causality. As you can see, the nation-state is the subject matter of law, economics, and political science. All three disciplines, which are different among themselves, are derived from the same organization, the nation-state. One focuses on the rules that bind, the other one focuses on exchanges, and the other one on decision-making, respectively. What is law? The answer, based on the cybernetics that we just studied, says that law is information in the form of rules, instructions, and structures that is used to create a complex self-organizing system called the nation-state, which in turn generates more laws, all of which are meant to preserve the values and reach the goals of its citizens. Generalized observance of the law is more important characteristic of the law than the threat of its coercive power. Thank you.